Hi, everyone. I have a special guest, Rebecca Pacheco, here to talk about her book, Still Life, which I was really excited about because I actually needed. I've been having, I think, some pretty foggy brain, and during COVID, having a really disorienting time trying to figure out how to quiet and how to slow down, but also to incorporate a meditation and a mindfulness practice that sort of makes sense for me. And I feel like Rebecca lays it out in a very non-judgmental, very flow oriented, like finding what's right for you and then going for it in Still Life. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming and for being willing to talk about your book and also share your story with us.
Thank you, Carissa. I love your work, and it's been fun to get to know you. And I feel like I could talk to you forever. We were talking before we logged on, and I'm very excited that you enjoyed the book. And from the title, it's clear that I do appreciate art and artists, even though I'm not one myself. Still life has many meanings, but of course, still life art was part of the inspiration. So I'm glad you like it.
Can you talk about the other two sort of meanings behind the title?
Sure. So, first, there's the obvious reference to stillness and finding stillness in the midst of our chaotic lives. And that doesn't necessarily mean being immobile or not moving. It's that inner stillness that could potentially happen while you are moving, maybe while you're out for a run, or you're carting the kids here and there and everywhere while you're making art or something. But certainly a steadiness, right? So it's that steadiness, that stillness. And then, of course, the book, I tried strength of very real.
Sorry, my mother's calling. That's funny. Anyway.
You see, still, it's actually perfect. That you can meditate every day of your life. You can do all the right things. You can drink all the green juice, and still life happens. And so it's kind of what we do with it. It's your beautiful piece of art about Googling coping with reality. So there's an element of that, but a lot of different meanings. And I like that you got that.
I think for me, it's been a challenge to sort of find ways of sort of dealing with and understanding where we're at in this moment that work for me, in the sense that I don't know, this isn't about like religion or spirituality, but in some ways it kind of, can you talk a little bit about the history of mindfulness and meditation?
Sure. I mean, I think what you're talking about there is just finding a way of processing reality, like processing what we're feeling in real time. And that's really what meditation and mindfulness do for us. In terms of their history, there's a long tradition, and there are many different religions and philosophies where there are contemplative practices or some element of meditation that comes into play. Most notably, Buddhism is, people would often tell you that the Buddha was the first meditation teacher. And I actually share a little bit of that story of the Buddha's enlightenment. And the two words, mindfulness and meditation, we use interchangeably, but they mean slightly different things. Meditation is more that formal practice where you might sit down and focus your attention on something specific, most popularly the breath, but it could also be, a piece of art. It could be a candle. It could be a mantra. And then mindfulness is how you do anything. It's a state of being. You can chop carrots mindfully for Thanksgiving dinner. You can drink your tea mindfully. You can have a mindful conversation. It's just that awareness that arises in the present moment, paying attention on purpose. That's sort of the definition that we would traditionally give. That originally comes from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's kind of the founder of modern mindfulness, the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally.
What are the sort of side effects of paying attention on in the moment mindfully?
Yeah, well, it all that really matters is what it does for you. So if I always tell people, like, I don't want to be the meditation's hype woman if they don't want to meditate, right? But people often find that it enhances, it improves a great many things in life, like concentration, focus, memory, decision making, mood regulation. I find that I sleep better when I meditate, or rather, if I'm going to have a night where I'm awake at 3 a.m. with some anxiety, with a fluttering heart, with, the breaking news just running rampant through my mind, it's because I scrimped or I skipped my meditation that day. So that for me is a big tell. But ultimately, it's about training ourselves, about creating a place of pause in our life where we have a little bit more agency and a little bit more choice about how we're going to respond to reality as it's happening.
I think I noticed that that question was for some reason really important to me. And I think that that harbors back to this, this sort of training of having to have a purpose or goal or an affect for everything, for doing anything. And I just wanted to note that for some reason I'm like not able to do things unless there's a goal or an outcome, or it will have some sort of positive effect when that's really not the point.
Well, I mean, the reason you have that is because you're a person operating in society, and that is what we're taught. That is how we're programmed. And now we have these hot little devices in our hands that are very devoted and built around measuring how things perform, how many likes they get, or how much time we spend doing XYZ. We want to measure everything. And the tricky part about meditation is that it's not a performance-based activity.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels a little disorienting sometimes, or it feels maybe like, is it working? Or how do I know if I'm doing it right? Those are some of the myths that I explore in the book. And what I would say to that is how freeing and how necessary to have a place in our lives where we don't have to worry about doing it right. We don't have to worry about how it looks. We don't have to worry about performing or being productive. There's this beautiful quote by Alan Watts who says, "So what is a good meditator then? One who meditates." I just love that because it is kind of counter to everything else that you're doing, that I'm doing in the world, as people who are working, creating, parenting, just trying to get through this very challenging time in history. So ideally having some practice, whatever it is, formal, informal, mindfulness, yoga, journaling, that gives you a little bit of a reprieve and a little bit of space from all that.
I think, I don't know if this is something that you've found, but I think my nature or human nature, it seems like to me, is that we don't do anything. It's hard to start a new practice that we know will be good for us, unless we make it easy or set it up.
Just start small.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of, I know this is sort of, again, like, do you have any sort of like tips on how to, like, if you're just putting your toe in, besides picking up your book, how you can kind of have that sort of small win or small joy or small moment to just reflect?
I think what it requires is the ability to say that something is better than nothing. Because what often keeps us from starting the new thing, even when we know that it will be good for us, even if we know that it will help with our mental health, even if we know it will help us sleep better at night, we know all the things intellectually, but still our lives are very full and it's very hard to organize our day differently. So we sometimes have that all or none mentality of like, I don't have 20 minutes to meditate. That's okay. Do you have 3? And then what can you do in those 3 minutes? Like, I find that is a better place to start. Let's do 3 to 5. And if it's not comfortable to sit in formal meditation, could you lie down? Can you lie down on your floor before you go to bed, and will it help you sleep better? Or if meditation isn't speaking to you, could you do a little breathing exercise, a journaling exercise? So there are a lot of options to build your own practice, but I do think the key is starting small and figuring out what works for you. If you're not worried about your phone time, an app might be a very good approach. I started now so long ago that apps did not exist, and I'm at a place now where I don't want to be on my phone in one more way. So I'm not that familiar with apps, but I know that they work for a great many people, and they can be very good. In a pinch, I'll listen to a meditative podcast that I enjoy. So there's a lot out there, and it's just, kind of sort of like art, sort of like creating, like, oh, let's tinker a little bit. Let's figure out what works. But something is better than nothing. Start with a reasonable commitment.
I think that your answer to that question kind of is a very nice sort of illustration of how you approach the book, in this sort of like finding what works for you and going through and starting simple. And I think for me, I was really trained in this ideology of perfectionism. And I think that part of what the book kind of is doing for me is sort of teaching me accepting the good enough, and like you're saying, something is better than nothing. And I think that in itself is a huge struggle to get over.
Yeah, I relate to that deeply. Are you familiar with Anne Lamott?
Yeah, give me a little bit more context and then I'll tell you.
Bird by Bird.
This sounds really familiar, but for some reason I'm having a difficult time pulling it up.
It's okay. She's just a wonderful writer. She's actually from your neck of the woods, and she has this beautiful paragraph in that book, Bird by Bird, in which she calls perfection the oppressor. Perfectionism is the oppressor. And she talks about how she's either like tripping over her feet and missing everything around her. And the irony of meditation and mindfulness is that it actually can improve performance. I've mentioned that before, but it's funny because we're not focused on doing it better. We're not fixing ourselves. We want to befriend ourselves for the ride. Like the destination might end up being a better one, but actually we're working on the journey and how we get there. It's that voice in our head. It's taking that pause. I had this giant breakthrough where for years I would set a New Year's resolution, and I would say, I'm going to meditate every day. This is the year I'm going to meditate every day. And I would get to, January 15th and implode,
Yeah.
And then finally, what I did was I removed every other guardrail, every other prescriptive. It had to be in the morning. It had to look a certain way. It had to be 20 minutes. All these obstacles I put in place for myself, I got rid of all of them. And the only thing that mattered is I had to do it each day. And then I meditated for 5 years without fail every day. It could be I woke up, I forgot to move my car, it's street cleaning, and I would dash out to the street, move the car in my pajamas, and then sit in the parked car for 3 minutes. But I would get it done. And then, on a good day, on a day where my schedule has more freedom, I would go longer. But that's how I built up that steadiness and that stability, was just like working with what I had. And the book is at its heart a how-to, but it's not rigid. It's not a one size fits all, like prescriptive, you must do this 2 times a day, morning and night. It's not that at all. And sometimes that's hard because I think people want those answers, but for me, it's just not realistic. It's not the way people operate and what we really actually need, or what will help us be successful.
I think too, there's this like tremendous pressure to have the answers immediately without doing the work, or the success without actually the time it takes to make it happen. And I think in itself, reading the book is an act of slowing down and trying to make sense of what your body needs and what your mind needs in this moment, how to build a sort of foundation for developing a meditation practice that makes sense and works in your life and your schedule.
Yeah.
So, Rebecca, I'm going to ask you, you're going to share two secrets, two for the price of one. That didn't make any sense. But can we talk about sort of one of the secrets, first start off with one of the secrets that's actually in Still Life, the book?
Yeah. One of the secrets that's in the book.
We both are connected in time and space by holding this object and
our turtlenecks. One of the secrets is that you must wear a turtleneck. No, one of the secrets is that you are not an entity to be fixed, because you are not a fixed entity. And that's something that took me a very long time to understand. I still have to remind myself. I still have to catch myself when I think meditation will fix me. But the truth is, as we've talked about a little bit, that we want to instead befriend on the journey. And we're always in process. You know, we were once 3 feet tall and we believed in Santa Claus. So
some people still believe in Santa Claus.
Oh, I know. Now we're going to have to do a spoiler.
Spoiler. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but anyway, you know, meditation is not self-improvement, it's self-acceptance. And so we're not trying to fix you because you're always in process. You're always an entity that is changing and growing and healing and evolving.
I think for me, thinking about our sense of self as an unfixed entity is really, it's counterintuitive in a lot of ways. Because I think that you think about, oh, you know, this is my present self. This is what I've always been and what I always will be. Can you kind of really quick, I'm just curious how you would define a fixed entity. What is it? What do you mean by that state? Or what do you think he means by that statement?
Well, I think the whole idea is the concept of the self is not finite, right? Like, in order to ask, is this going to fix me? Well, then the next question needs to be, well, who is the me?
Yeah.
Right? Because there are so many ways that we would describe ourselves that even 5 years ago, you may not. I mean, you and I have both become mothers pretty recently. So I'm a mother. Well, I wasn't a mother. Am I a different person now? Maybe in some ways, right? But that speaks to, there is something consistent in Carissa 5 years ago and Rebecca 5 years ago when we weren't moms to us now. What is that? And it is actually awareness itself. It's the awareness that Carissa had then, right? Because you could say, I don't know, I'm a young woman, I'm a student, I'm a business owner. So if you graduated or changed your job, are you no longer who you were, right? Like,
yeah.
So it, you know, the self is not a finite entity. It's not a fixed entity. And so therefore, we're not trying to fix you, right? It's all part of the process of life.
There was one other, thank you for breaking that down for me. And I like to think about, I've never thought about awareness as the sort of thorough line of self or of soul. I guess when you were talking about it, it made me think of how I would define or think about what a soul is. But I wanted to ask you, and maybe this isn't something you think about, but I have been thinking a lot about like how I'm trying to cultivate sort of this awareness of the presence and this like, being present, but also I have this such strong desire to be in either the past or the future. And I was wondering because I think a lot of the sort of tension for me with like mindfulness and meditative practices is that I think that there's so much in thinking about different time periods and the use of them. And I was wondering if you had an opinion on this.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's great. I mean, I think all of that is really good fodder. And you're an artist. Like, of course, you're always using the past as a medium, right? Those are like part of your materials. That's what you use to create. And I don't think there's a person on earth right now who doesn't want to move forward, right? Who doesn't want to like speed things up a little bit, right? Like, These are very natural human tendencies. It's just what the mind does. The mind is more often reliving the past, or it's fast forwarding to what's next, what's next, what's next. These are not bad things. These are just things. This is just what it is. However, it can be a stressful state to be in, to constantly be operating in the past or the present.
Mhm.
You know, and actually, in terms of science and you know, studies that have been done and are continuing to be done, and this is not my field, but there's a lot of research around mindfulness, and particularly in the medical field. But the mind itself, we've seen studies that it's happiest when it's immersed in one task, when it's doing one thing, as opposed to, you know, shifting, the, you know, the myth of multitasking. And so all we want to do there is spend a little time pausing, hitting pause.
Mhm.
One of my favorite mantras I'll share with you
Oh, I was
is,
going to ask you what your current mantra. Well, I want to hear this one on your current one. Sorry to derail your thought. Give me
oh,
your mantra, your favorite mantra. One of
no,
yours.
that's okay. We can fold it together. I think it wraps in with this, but it's a very simple one. It's 2 words, and you can link it to your breath if you like. You know, inhale the first word and exhale the second word. And it's just this.
Just
Inhale just, exhale this. So when I find myself really overwhelmed, or like, you know, speeding forward at a rapid pace, maybe even in the realm of panic, it can be so valuable to pump the brakes a little bit and bring ourselves home to just this. Now, that doesn't mean we can't create beautiful art from past memories, or that we don't want this crummy day to be over with that's been horrible, right? Both of those things are very valid human. We're not going to like judge them and make them anything more than they are. But we're going to find a little bit of space and presence in the midst of it.
That's beautiful, Rebecca. I don't know why that hit me as such a sort of rubbed up against a tender spot of, because it seems so hard at this moment to sort of accept just this, but the reality is that this is all we have.
Right.
This, and I love the 2 words, the in and out.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna try it. I've been doing trying to focus on box breathing, so box breath. But I think I like this better. Not that one has to be better, or anyway,
Yeah.
I'm gonna switch it up with a just this.
I appreciate so much your tenderness and the closeness to the surface of that. I get it, and I think hopefully you find like a few different things that you choose from, like based on the day, right? Like if you're having a day where you feel yourself speeding forward, maybe just this, just 10 times, you know, 10 breaths in and out, and you sit, you know, or frankly, like, you know, I know you have a toddler. That's really what they need and want from us, is like, just be here with me right now. They are, and even when they're upset, it's sort of like, maybe it's not the most comfortable place to be, but can we be with just this, and can we just hold the space, not try to change it or manufacture something different, or judge ourselves harshly because we want it to be a different way, but can we receive, hold, and then choose action? You know, the other myth is that meditation is passive, or that we it's we're so still that we're immobile. No, we can take action. We can change things. If it's uncomfortable, then we can change course. We have agency, but it's making those decisions from a steadier place, from like a more solid
Would it
place.
be using your prefrontal cortex versus your midbrain, or your reactionary sort
Yeah,
of
your amygdala. Yeah.
yeah, or not trying to make decisions reliant on your amygdala?
Right. Right.
It's hard sometimes. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
and particularly if you've had any trauma in your life, and quite honestly, anyone in the world is going to have trauma at some point in life. because that some form, whether it's small or major, but we all experience loss. And that's when, to my understanding, the amygdala is like the smoke detector for the brain, and it's sending signals like danger, danger, and it gets a little triggered and it starts going off when it doesn't necessarily need to. And so, meditation can help with reminding us I'm safe, of feeling safe in our bodies again. And that's not to say it should take the place of other forms of therapy or treatment, but it can be a way of like coming back to safety and solid ground, and just this one breath at a time.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. We're like I took up way more of your time than I said I would. I really want to just remind people the book is Still Life. It's out right now. And it was really helpful for me as an extra tool, not to, again, I'm questioning my word choices. But to kind of sit back and to figure out how to be present, how to notice the extraordinary in the ordinary. I don't know if you would use those words, but it's also very accessible. It makes meditation, breaks it down into sort of bite-sized pieces that seem manageable to do something and not just be overwhelmed and do nothing. So thank you so much, Rebecca.
You're doing it already. I'm so happy to meet you, and thank you for the time and the conversation and just what you're creating and bringing to people, because you are actually bringing a form of mindfulness to people when they look at your art and they feel what they feel. And that intention is very apparent, and it's really special. So thank you for welcoming me into your fold today.
Thank you too. Take care and have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you. You too.
In touch. Bye.
Take care. Bye.